0% is not the goal I thought I'd be trying to accomplish after skipping the Great Sky Island, mainly because I wasn't familiar with the list of goals the game considers when calculating the final percentage. When I saw that I only got 0.2% on my first successful attempt of GSI Skip, I looked it up. And yeah, it's completely doable. While the setup and execution is time consuming and difficult, adding the layer of getting 0% at the same time isn't that much more work, to be honest. And if I'm going to make the effort to skip GSI again, I'm going to try to test two other things as well. Whenever you first start in the Room of Awakening, you're stuck in a room until you cut these two vines to get out, making your only option to grab the Decayed Master Sword in order to cut the vines. Given that the Decayed Master Sword only has 6 durability before it breaks, the game has a flag that makes the weapons lose no durability on use. This is to prevent you from breaking the sword before cutting the vines and locking yourself in. The interesting thing about this is this applies to all weapons and shields, and if you were able to get out of the room without cutting the vines, you might be able to play the game with infinite durability weapons. Well, we have gotten out of the room before, but unfortunately, the infinite durability only lasts until you reach the Temple of Time for the first time. My question is, what if we don't? Given that we aren't going to the Temple of Time at all, can we create a weapon that will still have infinite durability all the way through to the end of the game? I'm starting to get some ideas. The second thing I want to accomplish is standing on the surface. Currently I'm doing some janky stuff to beat the game without doing GSI, but I haven't felt the freedom of existing in a world without barriers. While I don't think I can find a way to remove the barriers right now, I want to take some steps towards that goal. I want to stand on the surface. So let's get started, talking about the glitches I'll be using in this video. Zuggle is a glitch where we remove, equip, and remove a weapon or shield within a few frames, using the map room to buffer these frames. This allows us to stack equipment outside the game's view, which can be used for more damage or to take equipment from one save to another. Fuse entanglement is when we interrupt our attempt to fuse an object to our shield by changing shields in the middle of our fuse. This allows the object to still be in the game world while the game thinks it's attached to our shield. This also allows non-Zonai devices to move during dialogue. When we Zuggle a shield that we use for fuse entanglement, we can transfer that object with the shield to another save. This is called a Zlot, or a Zuggle load object transfer. Recalling a Zlotted object and then loading a save causes the object to be frozen in time until we recall it again, or put the shield in our inventory to remove the object from the game. This is called a recall lock. In this video I'll be hopping between the present time and the future. The present being the save file I'm trying to achieve 0%, and the future being the save file I'm using to lend a hand to my past self. I'll be putting these markers on the top left corner whenever that information is relevant. To get 0%, the only thing I need to do differently from my GSI Skip video are the 2 caves in the Great Sky Island location. After the prologue, we start in the Room of Awakening. Given that I want to experiment with unbreakable weapons, I need to avoid cutting down these vines. Before I do that, I'm going to send myself a care package to start the game. Normally I need to get rubies to fight the army, and while I'm hoping my weapons will be unbreakable, I can't rely on that being the case. In order to get rubies, I need to enter at least one cave, so to avoid that cave, I'll send myself a ruby. We can do this by slotting the ruby and loading the save. Next I'm going to send myself a busted weapon. If this weapon happens to be unbreakable, then in theory I could send myself a Royal Guard's weapon fused with the strongest Lionel Horn. A Royal Guard's weapon deals double damage on the last 3 hits, but on the very last hit, the one that is supposed to break on, it deals double that damage as well. So maybe I could get a sword all the way down to the last hit and use it on the present file to deal almost 400 damage per hit. To transfer this weapon, we'll need to Zlot any other weapon and also Zuggle the weapons that we want to transfer. Zlotting a random weapon lets us pick up a weapon in the room so that we can then drop the Zuggle and pick up the transferred weapon. I'll also be sending myself a message not found Master Sword as a backup. I'll be doing the same with the shield for the SDC later. After that, I'll need to send myself some fairies. While I don't need fairies, cause I'm a pro gamer that never dies, I do absolutely need them for something later in the video. This is a new glitch that I was unaware of until after GSI Skip. Not that I would have used it though. This glitch uses Minu Hold Smuggle. Minu Hold Smuggle is the act of summoning Minu and getting honor, pausing the game, and then dismissing Minu, holding the item you want to smuggle, watching 2 memories, and then backing out of the menu. This puts the items in a state where the menu thinks they're in our hands, but the game doesn't perform the holding animation. While in this state, we get access to another glitch called Item Save Load Transfer. In order to transfer them to another save, we need to die, head to the title screen, and load the save we want to transfer to. To complete the transfer, we only need to hold one item, back out of the menu, drop them on the ground, and pick them all up. It's important to note that none of these items count towards what the game considers as completion percent. Now for the SDC. SDC gives us a clip to fall out of the room and hit the title cutscene trigger. So I'll need to slot a steering stick, then I can drop the shield and ride the stick shortly afterwards. After the title cutscene, we are presented with our first real obstacle, avoiding the Great Sky Island location. Avoiding the GSI location means we need to avoid standing anywhere on this part of the first island. To help out with that, instead of trying to do it right after the title cutscene, I can save immediately, load the game to put me back in the Room of Awakening after the title cutscene. I'll perform the clip again and move to the front of this room. I'll clip again and start using the Mazdoor jumps to get to the spot that I need to avoid the location. I could perform a fall damage cancel on this wall, but I have fairies, so I just hit the ground. Now I've successfully avoided the GSI location. I dupe the rubies and fairies and get the Puripad. Here's where I make a hard save and return to the future to start the setup of GSI Skip. My previous video goes into plenty of detail about GSI Skip, so this time I plan to show the setup more linearly. But I've also released a mostly unedited video from the start of GSI Skip setup to the start of Army. I did speed up the drop though. As much as I want to make a guide for this setup isn't going to last long. The community and myself will find a much faster way to do this, and hopefully easier. I wouldn't suggest you try it unless you're really feeling it. It's literally the first thing that worked, and the speed or difficulty of the setup was last on my list of priorities. The unedited run is on my second channel, where I intend to post more unscripted guides for things I don't really want to make a whole video about. To summarize, I need to get to the Army trigger from GSI, because the Army trigger takes priority over the void out that normally happens when you attempt to leave the Great Sky Island early. I'll be doing this by using a steering stick to clip during the battery dialogue, as the battery text box makes you fall slowly. After making my way to the bottom floor out of bounds, I'll have a platform that I've set up in the future file. This platform is weightless, but is locked in place by a single board. Because the build is weightless, I need to add just a little bit of weight to the back. This is because everything but the board on the bottom that's locking the build is ghost glued to a hoverstone, which forces the platform to be in a constant state of tension, trying to make its way to the hoverstone. The hoverstone is recall locked in a small part of the Army trigger that is out of bounds, and the only way I can get this build to make it all the way is if the weight is enough to keep me low, so I travel underneath the area and get Link inside the trigger. First, I head to my house to get mentally prepared to try this again. I also tend to keep things I use often as shields on my wall, so I grab the stone slab and head to Terrytown. Once I get my slab, I grab a few extra boards and make my way to the Riverside stable. This is where all of the build setup takes place. I first fuse and tangle the board I'm going to use to lock the build, then fuse and tangle all the other boards and a hoverstone. I build a box without a lid, and then ultra broken free call the whole build, leaving off the locking board, the weight, and the hoverstone. I zuggle all my shields and leave the build here for now. I head up to the place I'm going to clip and set up a steering stick using weapon fuse entanglement. I take a practice shot and then recall lock the stick in place. Now I can head back down to my build. I've placed markers on my map at the stick's location, so I move my build underneath that. I head into a shrine to get the build to fall below the depths. Then warp to the place I'm using to get out of bounds. Once out of bounds, I get as close as I can to the build to get it to continue to fall to the bottom of the depths. The floor has no friction, so everything slides around freely, except the sled, so I use that to mark the spot and recall lock the build. When I load the save, I have to get out of bounds again, but this time I use the frictionless floor to slide to the build and give me a little bit of a break. Once I arrive, I ghost glue the hoverstone to the front of the build, and to help me peel it away, I use another hoverstone and a rocket. I glide across the ground until I'm behind Ganondorf and make my way up to the area where I'm going to leave it. I carefully back this closer to the trigger. I mark this part of the map as it's where the back of the army trigger is. At this point I get my hoverstone as high up as this area will allow. I'll recall lock it and head to the GSI save. I'm only here for a moment to void out and get an autosave. I head back to the future and make some last minute adjustments to the stick to better line it up with the build. I use the autosave I made a moment ago and head over to this construct to get a bow and some arrows. And just to show you the infinite durability weapon, at least you can see it now in case it doesn't work at army. I grab the club weapon and head to my steering stick. I make sure I have no shield equipped and pick up the board shield. I drop my Zuggled steering stick club and pick it up. I get into position. While this is relatively easy to do, I still get nervous. I take my shot, SDC, and we're good. Now we wait. I properly timed this and it turns out it's only an hour and 20 minutes, but it also depends on how low you are before the dialogue starts and how high the platform is off the floor of the depths. While I've skipped GSI, I'm not done with it. A question I get asked often is if I think GSI Skip will ever be possible for an any % speedrun. Unfortunately, I don't see any of the current glitches that will make that possible. But given what I know about the glitches we do have and the effort this community has put into finding these glitches, I'd say it might be possible one day. Or it might be safer to say that I don't think it's impossible. If I'm the person that finds it though, I can guarantee the title of that video will say TOTK any % world record. Cause you best bet I'm gonna snatch me a world record out of it. It might be short-lived, but I'll take it. Subscribe to the channel in case that day ever comes. But I also have a lot of interesting videos on the horizon. Well, I'm at my platform. I know it's hard to tell, but I landed on the top of the build rather than in it. This at least gives us a better view of the journey to army. Once I get there, I pause because I'm scared. Link looks like he's about to fall out. Honestly, I'm surprised I even made it. So after I unpause, I plow through the dialogue and I'm at army. Out of muscle memory, I throw a ruby, but I want to test my weapon. I had an idea of what I wanted this test to look like. I choose the claymore so that I could spin. And I left the part out where I duped a ton of stamina onions to make a bunch of stamina food. And then cut out all the menu frames to make it look like one cool shot. First though, I test the weapon, and it's unbreakable still. So I spin my way through army. After army, I need to clip into the Ganondorf fight, and in this attempt I just grab 2 spears and use this wall to zuggle a few more times. I clip in the normal speedrun spots. Then the Ganondorf fight, which is made pretty easy by this weapon. Then the Demon Dragon fight, which the weapon is still unbreakable. I sorta thought it might stop working here. There's still not much to see in this fight, so we move to catching Zelda and to end the game with 0%. But wait a minute, what about touching the surface? Those of you with a keen eye might have seen that when I zuggled all those shields that there was a wing shield in the mix, but why? Well, before I started the setup for GSI Skip, I fuse entangled a wing and recall locked it in the sky. Where in the sky though? Right there. Zelda's gonna have to wait. I have a surface that I need to stand on. We are gonna escape needing to catch Zelda. This was something that was discovered by the Japanese glitch hunting community and is the main reason we needed the fairies. If we land on this object, we get an extremely limited amount of control. The only thing we can do is move, jump, and jump attack, but the jump attack is cancelled after 1 frame. We can also dive, but diving will completely lock us out of landing again. Unfortunately, there is an invisible box around Zelda, but if we face Link in the direction we want to go and run off, we start falling until we are under this invisible wall. We can then use the jump attack to rise back up. Unfortunately, there is a larger box around this area that prevents you from landing on the surface or getting too far away. But these sky islands are within that box, so we're gonna make our way over there. Very slowly, might I add. While we are doing the jump attack, we can only head in one direction, so whatever direction we chose will hopefully lead us to the sky island. Unfortunately, I missed, but there is hope to recover. I can press R to skydive and you'll see that we aren't descending at all. If I make my way over to this construct, he will attack me and knock me out of my skydive. So, I'm standing on something other than GSI, but it's not the surface. So I line up to head down to this island. So when doing Zelda Escape on a normal file, we would come here to do the dive challenge. This removes the barrier, giving us more access to the world. But the first time you come here, you need to activate this terminal, and we can't activate it in this state. If you haven't noticed, we don't have Raru's arm. But in a normal file, you can just come here and do that before beating the game and leaving Zelda in the sky. And it's a lot easier with the paraglider. Doing this causes a massive amount of extremely fun and interesting glitches, which you can do in all versions of the game without any glitches to set up. How about this? I'll release a guide once I get to 25k subscribers. I'm just kidding. I'll release a guide right after this video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Anyways, this still isn't the surface. So I set my sights on Hyrule Castle. I have to be lined up perfectly. Any small deviation at this distance could make me miss my mark. I make it to the castle, and I have to be very careful because the void out trigger is right beneath my feet. And that will send me back to catching Zelda without any ability to land on my platform again. I know there's a Korok at the top, so I climb up here to see if I can get it. And I can. I know Koroks count towards the percentage, but nothing I do in this state counts towards the completion percentage. But this still isn't the surface. With the trigger so high, I don't know if I can. I look around and it kinda looks like part of Death Mountain is above the trigger. So I wiggle my way over there. I'm expecting to get jacked any minute now, but I was able to land. I'm on the surface without ever doing GSI. While I would have preferred complete freedom, this will do for now, but I do have a hope that I can remove the GSI barrier completely. One last thing though, I head to this sky island and then make my way to GSI. It's crazy because GSI has no collision in this state. This has nothing to do with the fact that I skipped GSI, it's just how it is in the Zelda catch state we are in. I also made an attempt to get taken by the Lost Woods, but it never took me. So it's time to turn in. I hit the boundary, catch Zelda, and beat the game. I'll load back into my save and look at my percentage. %. Well, that's all I have for this video. I want to thank my channel members, CTV, Crescendo, Dance France, D5 4Bs, Taco Sensei, Math Music, Shuishi, Planethac, Trevor, Jane Keto, Weirda, and Why You Have to Be Mad. Thanks for watching.